How a regular student can make $3,000 to $5,000 a month just by editing short videos. Every day, millions of people open TikTok. They scroll through videos. They laugh. They waste time. They close the app. And then the next day, they do the same thing. But while most people are consuming content, some people are making money from it. Without connections, without experience, without an expensive computer. So the question isn't whether it's possible to make money editing short videos. The question is something else. If the opportunity exists, why aren't most people making any money yet? And today, we'll look at a system that allowed an ordinary student to earn around $4,000 a month. Without filming, without showing their face, without having an audience. When most people hear the word editor, they imagine someone cutting videos, adding music, creating beautiful transitions. But in 2026, a good TikTok editor does something completely different. What is it really? Think about it. If two people record the exact same story, the camera is the same, the person is the same, the topic is the same. Why will one video get 500 views and the other 500,000? The difference in presentation. This is the difference clients pay for. For audience retention, video structure. The first 3 seconds, pace subtitles, visual accents, emotions, and most importantly, they pay for views. Because views translate into money. Attention is the new currency of the internet. And when you begin to understand this, you stop seeing editing as a skill. You start seeing it as a business, because views translate into money. The most common question newbies ask is, if everything is so good, where are the clients? But that's the wrong question. You don't need to look for clients. You need to look for their problems, and problems are always and everywhere. Let's try this first. Open TikTok. Find a creator with 5,000 to 10,000 subscribers. Most likely, they. Film themselves, edit themselves, write their own scripts, respond to comments, publish their own content, and gradually start to burn out. This is your potential client. Further details: TikTok, Instagram, YouTube, Shorts, Reddit, Discord, X, Facebook groups. Now the important part. Newbies make the main mistake. They write, "Hello, I'm an editor." No one will buy your editing. People buy the result. Example message, message analysis, why it works. If you write like a salesperson, you're ignored. If you show a solution to a problem, you're responded to. Now let's imagine you've found your first client. What do you do next? Most people start selling and lose right away because the client doesn't know you. They don't trust you. This is normal in practice. The client isn't familiar with your work, and in the beginning, they shouldn't trust you and pay money right away. That's why the first client is almost always built on one thing: trust. Next, how can you get to know them? Free test editing. How to do a sample edit. How many seconds to charge. How to format a portfolio. Where to store work. How to submit results. At this stage, almost 90% of newbies give up immediately. The problem is the desire to get everything at once. They send 10 messages. They take on several clients at once, and then they say, "It's not working. I can't do it." This isn't a profitable niche. Most people overestimate 1 day's work and underestimate 30 days of consistency. How much can you really earn? Now let's talk about earnings. And here's where the fun begins. If you open a video on YouTube, you'll see 2 camps. The first says, "It's impossible to make money editing." The second will say, "I made $10,000 in a month." The problem is that both sides usually only show the extremes, and the reality lies in between. Imagine 2 editors. Both work the same number of hours. Both use the same programs. Both know how to do subtitles. Both know how to do effects. but one makes $600 a month, and the other makes $6,000 a month. Why? Because the market doesn't pay for editing. The market pays for value. Let's start with a beginner. Imagine someone who's just starting out. They have no portfolio, no reviews, no clients. So their main goal isn't to make money. His main goal is to prove that he can deliver results. That's why the first money is small, from $200 to $800 per month. But there's an important point here. This is money earned through skill, not time spent at a factory, not a shift at a restaurant, not working as a courier, but through knowledge. And for many, this moment becomes a turning point. But here's the interesting thing. Most people never get beyond this stage. Why? Because they continue to think like editors, instead of thinking like entrepreneurs. The question arises, how can I make editing better? Although the question should be, how can I help my client earn more? After a few months, something important starts to happen. Regular clients appear. This is where the money starts to grow the fastest. Because finding clients is the most expensive part of any business. If a client comes back again and again, your income becomes predictable. That's why many editors reach the $1,000 to $3,000 per month range. Not because they become editing geniuses, but because they've learned to retain clients. The first client will bring in the money. The second client will bring stability. Now let's break down the numbers. Imagine one client paying you $300 per month. That's a pretty standard rate for a small writer. How many clients do you need for $1,000? Just 4. For $2,000? 7. For $3,000? 10. And suddenly the goal no longer seems impossible. Because you don't need thousands of clients. You need a few good ones. But there's a level that's less talked about. From $3,000 to $5,000 per month. This is where true professional work begins. At this level, an editor isn't selling a service anymore. They're selling a solution. He understands retention. He understands algorithms. He understands content. He understands the audience. And he becomes part of the client's business. And here's where an interesting paradox arises. Many people think, to earn more, you need to work more. But it's the other way around. The best editors don't necessarily work more hours. They work with more valuable clients. One client worth $1,000 can generate more profit than 5 clients worth $200. And this explains why some people get stuck on $500 for years. They're constantly looking for new clients, constantly starting over, constantly selling themselves, but never building long-term relationships. Now I think you understand. The most stable money doesn't come from finding clients. It comes from retaining clients. When someone works with you for a month, then a second, then a sixth, and at some point you realize most of your income comes from people you found many months ago. So ask yourself the right questions. Not, how much can I earn? The right question is, what client problem can I solve? Because the answer to this question ultimately determines your income. The market never pays for effort. It pays for results.
Why do most people never achieve a good income? By this point, it might seem pretty simple. Find a client, do the work, get paid, repeat the process again. But if it were that simple, every other person would already be making money editing. And here, the question arises. Why do some people make several $1,000s a month after a year, while others quit after a few weeks? Most people think the problem is competition. They open TikTok, they open YouTube, and see thousands of other editors. Then they conclude, the market is already saturated. But that's not entirely true. Most competition only exists at the start. Imagine a marathon. At the start, there are thousands of runners. But the further you watch, the fewer people remain. After a few kilometers, the crowd begins to thin. After a few hours, many drop out, and only a few make it to the finish line. The internet works similarly. The biggest competition isn't among the professionals. It's among the newbies. Many start out overly emotional. On the first day, they're motivated. On the second day, too. By the third week, not so much. After a month, they start asking themselves, is it even worth it? It's at this point that most people turn back. The irony is that the market almost never tests talent first. First, it tests patience. Because a talented person who gives up after a month will always lose to someone with average skills who keeps working for a whole year. But there's another reason why editors never succeed, and it's much more dangerous. Distraction. Today, one person is learning editing. Tomorrow, they're starting dropshipping. A week later, he studies cryptocurrency. Then he launches an AI agency. Then he returns to editing. Then he changes direction again. And a year later, he finds himself right back where he started. People often overestimate what can be accomplished in a week, but they greatly underestimate what can be accomplished in a year because real results almost always look boring. They are built gradually, like a puzzle from small pieces that assemble a picture which individually seem insignificant. And here another myth arises. Many believe that successful editors have some special secret. But if you look at most success stories, the secret usually turns out to be much more boring. They simply continued working when everyone else had already stopped. This doesn't mean the path will always be perfect. There will be bad projects. There will be difficult clients. There will be mistakes. There will be videos that don't get views. There will be better months. And the months are worse. This is a normal part of any business. Patience is the key. But there is one piece of good news. Every problem you face, chances are someone else has already faced it. And someone has already found a solution. That's why it's much easier to get started today than it was 5 or 10 years ago. That's why the question has never been, are you talented enough? Because talent is rarely the main factor. Something else is far more important. Can you continue long enough for your talent to even manifest itself? And if you look at it that way, a good income stops looking like luck. It starts looking like the result of consistency, day after day, week after week, month after month. So the main question is no longer whether the opportunity exists. Because the opportunity exists, the main question is something else. What will you do after this video ends? How to make money. Editing TikTok wasn't just about editing. It was about opportunity, about a skill that can be mastered, about a market that continues to grow, and about people who one day decided to try something new, while millions of people consume content every day. Some create it, some help it improve, and some turn it into a full-fledged business. And almost every such journey begins the same way, with one skill, with one project, with one opportunity. Big results rarely come overnight, but they almost always start with one right decision. If you enjoyed this analysis, please support the video with a like and subscribe to the channel. More stories about making money, business, finance, and the opportunities of the digital world are ahead. See you in the next video.